Where's the other girls at? Where's my little redhead? Here in a second. They're in the bathroom. So.
Are they? Is she
and they're,
one? Is she Pillen?
She's a true. She's Sarah's daughter.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Today is an extraordinarily important conversation and press conference that we're talking about the second most important thing in the state of Nebraska. We all agree. First is it's our people, the people in Nebraska, extraordinary. The second thing is our water. Water is absolutely everything. I think it's worth spending a couple minutes so that we're all on the same page of understanding what has taken place in the state of Nebraska in my lifetime when it comes to water is absolutely unprecedented anywhere in the world. If you think back when our state was founded, many said we were the dry desert plains and that there would be no way to raise crops in Nebraska. That corn could only be raised between the rivers, between the Missouri and the Mississippi, where there's dark soil and it rains all the time. God graced us with the extraordinary Ogallala Aquifer, which, just so we're all on the same page, is the largest, most sustainable underground reservoir in the Western Hemisphere. Really, really proud of the work that Jesse and Matt in the Department of Water, Energy, Environment is doing to make sure that we protect our aquifer by the quantity and that we improve our water quality. But I think what's really, really important for today is every drop of water matters, and it's really important that we stand up for Nebraska and for the people in Nebraska. And so it's really simple. Agriculture has been transformed. Today we irrigate 11 million acres. Nebraska agriculture feeds the world and saves the planet doing it. Nobody can raise as much per acre as we do in Nebraska. Not anywhere where the soil is dark all the way down and it rains. Because of the technology and because of irrigation, it has transformed agriculture, livestock feeding, and the impact we have. Just 2 mornings ago, I had breakfast with the ambassador of Japan. He came in from D.C. and so incredibly grateful the impact Nebraska has on helping Japan feed their families. So it's really, really important that we protect every drop, and we're here to talk today about the Perkins Canal. And there's a couple things I think are really important that I want to cover, and then I'll turn it over. But, you know, the South Platte River Compact was signed by Nebraska and Colorado in 1923, and it was ratified by the Congress in 1926. That makes it a very, very unique structure, and it was approved interstate compact, and it's treated as a contract, a state law, and a federal law. It's really, really important that all of us understand that. It is crystal clear. It's crystal clear. Colorado's been holding water back from Nebraska for almost 100 years and getting more and more egregious every single day. I'm really grateful to Attorney General Hilgers and his team. Grateful to the work that Jesse Bradley and Matt Manning have done, and a bunch of stakeholders that are here that have been working on this project for 25 plus years. The last 2 years, we've been working. We've been Nebraska nice. We've been working with Colorado. Many of us have been there. We've been in Colorado meeting farmers who are supportive, who are on the team, who no problem, we'll sell our land, and then all of a sudden, the state steps in, the state of Colorado steps in with a different format. So today, it's really, really simple. We're here to put our gloves on. We're going to fight like heck. We're going to get every drop of water. It's really, really important, and the Attorney General Hilgers and his team are going to put everything on the deck for Nebraska and take it to the United States Supreme Court. We're not going to any other courts. We're going to the United States Supreme Court. We've been losing to Colorado on this issue for too long. It's time we win, and that's where we're going to do it at the United States Supreme Court. I think that, you know, the other thing that's really important for everybody to understand is Colorado's ongoing water development. They want it all. They have no interest in anything being fair and just. They want absolutely everything. They're even stealing the water from their own farmers, for crying out loud. They are going to continue to develop the upstream economy at the expense of Colorado farmers and Nebraska farmers, and I might also say the city of Lincoln. This project's gigantic for the city of Lincoln because that'll be about 12% of the water as it flows from the Perkins Canal. So when some say this is just a western Nebraska, panhandle, whatever, that couldn't be further from truth. This is a Nebraska issue from the river out to Harrison. And I couldn't be more proud of the people behind me and all the work that they've done. And with that, I want to turn it over to Attorney General Hilgers and give us a little more good stuff for the battle. There you are, Mike.
Thanks, Governor. Thank you so much. Well, good morning, everybody. As we speak, Nebraska is filing with the United States Supreme Court an original action suing the state of Colorado over the Perkins County Canal, over the Nebraska-Colorado 1923 compact. Before I tell you a little bit of the background as to what we're doing and why we're doing it, I do want to give a really gigantic thank you to Governor Pillen, to his team. Since we started this process, they have been locked arms with us. They understand the importance, and they've given us nothing but all the support that they could give us and all the support that we need to be successful. I also want to thank Director Bradley and his team. They've been great teammates, as well as all of the gentlemen here and all of the agencies that they represent. Truly, in the western part of the state, they are on the front line seeing the impact of Colorado's violation of the 1923 compact, and they've been nothing but supportive for the work that we've done so far, and I know that they will be supportive for the work that we have going ahead. So what I'd like to do is just give you a little bit of context. Some of you have reported pretty heavily on this. Some of you maybe haven't thought about it in 4 or 5 months. So I think it's important for Nebraskans to understand what it is we're doing and why we're doing it, because I think this may be the most consequential lawsuit that this office will be a part of in my generation. It is almost impossible to overstate the importance of the South Platte River to the future of the state of Nebraska. So to just give you a brief history lesson, I promise I won't go over 100 years of history over this compact, but before the compact was signed, before 1923, Nebraska actually had rights. I think this is important for Nebraskans to understand. We had the right, as Nebraskans, to be able to assert our senior water rights over junior users in Colorado. What that means is, before the compact was executed, we actually could shut down junior users in the state of Colorado. It's a bad thing for those users, something that the state of Colorado didn't like, and they negotiated with the state of Nebraska so that Nebraska would give up that right. It's a very powerful, very valuable right. We gave it up in 1923 in exchange for 2 significant promises. The first promise is that Nebraska would get 120 cubic feet per second of flow from the South Platte River during the summertime season, from April to October. That was promise number 1. Promise number 2 was, if Nebraska were to build the Perkins County Canal, what we know as the Perkins County Canal, that we would get an additional at least 500 cubic feet per second in the non-irrigated season. This is an enormous quantity of water, and it is hard to overstate the impact, not just of the western part of the state and agriculture, our most important industry, but throughout the state of Nebraska today, including Lincoln, as the governor mentioned, including industry, our ability to grow, second most important resource, and truly our ability to grow as a community and as a state will be restricted, if not devastated, if we lose access to this water. But also, this is a compact that ultimately was agreed to in 1923 that exists in perpetuity. So we could take a 50-year time horizon, and that would not be long enough truly, as long as there's a state of Nebraska and there's a state of Colorado and there's a South Platte River, this compact will matter, and enforcing our rights under the compact will matter. So Colorado gave us these two very important rights. Now I'm going to fast forward 90 years, and about 10 years ago or so, plus or minus, the state of Colorado was undergoing a rapid expansion in the Front Range. You know the population growth that's going on there. The state of Colorado was aggressively pursuing water from the South Platte River in ways that we knew were harming Nebraska and would absolutely harm Nebraska going forward. We would lose not the entitlement to the water, but we would lose the water to which we're entitled if Colorado's growth was unchecked and we didn't assert our rights. So 3 years ago in 2022, when I was Speaker of the Legislature, working with then Governor Ricketts, we passed a bill to support the initial phase of the Perkins County Canal construction, which was approved by the legislature and gave us the funds to do the first phase. Phase 2 was approved under Governor Pillen's leadership in 2023. That was when the legislature provided the funding to build the Perkins County Canal. Now, I want to tell you three sort of work streams that happened from 2023 to today, because one of the questions you might ask is, why didn't you sue 2 years ago? And I want to tell you three different work streams that we have been working under that have sort of culminated to this moment, very briefly. And then after that, I'll just tell you what the going forward is, and I'll hand it over to Director Bradley. The first work stream is the design of the canal. That's under Director Bradley's leadership. They've been working on the design. As part of that work, they had to identify the very specific parcels that we potentially could purchase. There was indications that the governor mentioned that some of the landowners, maybe all of the landowners, actually had a desire to sell to Nebraska. And we owe a fiduciary responsibility to the citizens of this state to explore every avenue to be able to build this canal as cheaply and as inexpensively and as quickly as possible. So the work of the design and the land acquisition process, there's been public reporting on this, went all the way till about April, May of this year. We sent out offers. Some of those landowners who said that they were interested in selling have decided to change their mind, and those landowners, instead of actually being interested in selling, now all have expressed a very public desire to fight Nebraska in eminent domain proceedings in Colorado. That was the first phase, sort of just culminated just within the last 2 months. The second phase, along with designing the canal, there was significant hydrological work that went along with the design of the canal, understanding the size of the canal, the impact, how we were going to put the canal together. As part of that, we started to better understand actually the breach of the compact for the summertime flows. Whenever we talk about the South Platte River, I think over the last 2 years, we've been almost exclusively talking about the canal. That's an important part. If we don't build the canal, we don't have a right to the wintertime flows. What we haven't talked as much about is the impact of the lack of water that we are entitled to today during the summertime. The work through the design and Director Bradley's team that they did on the hydrology started to give us more sense and scope, and be able to quantify a little bit better, really the degree of the breach from Colorado. And just to give you some sense of what we think from a conservative basis, we think that we have lost out on over 1 million acre-feet of water during the summertime. So put aside the Perkins County Canal itself, during the summertime, not just in the last year, over a period of time. That's a significant amount of water that has an enormous amount of value. Just that water alone is valued conservatively in the 9 or 10 figures, potentially over $1 billion, depending on how you measure it. So that's the second work stream. That also sort of has culminated very recently. And the third is the conversations that I've had and my team has had with our counterparts in the Colorado Attorney General's office. We've had a number of productive conversations over the last year and a half to try to narrow the issues of dispute between Nebraska and Colorado, try to understand their legal position, to see if there's a way going forward where we could reach an agreement. And it became clear, despite the very professional and intentional scope of those negotiations, that we were at an impasse. And let me just give you 2 examples of things that we disagree on, that we could not move forward on actually building the canal without resolution. And these are issues that only the United States Supreme Court can address and resolve. The first one is the scope of the eminent domain right. We don't think there's any other compact in the history of the United States, and there might be one, so I don't want to say this definitively, but we are not aware of any other compact that gives one state, in this case Nebraska, the right of eminent domain in another state, in this case Colorado. The 1923 compact gave Nebraska that right. There's a threshold question. Where do we exercise that right if we have to exercise eminent domain? Do we do it in federal court in Colorado? Do we do it in water court in Colorado? Do we do it in state court? There's a disagreement between Nebraska and Colorado as to even where to start enforcing our rights under the compact. Another example is the size of the canal. We think that the canal gives us entitlement to at least over 500 cubic feet per second. They think that's not a floor, but that's a ceiling. That impacts the size of the canal. We can't build a canal without that having been resolved. There are other issues that we've identified from those discussions with Colorado. It's helped crystallize the issues that will be before the United States Supreme Court, but it made very clear that the next step, and the next step to defend Nebraska's rights under the 1923 Compact, is by filing this lawsuit with the highest court in the land, who has the authority, the only court that has the authority and the ability to resolve these particular issues between two sovereign states. Going forward, here's what, to give you some sense of what to expect. I'm sure we'll get some questions on this. The United States Supreme Court process isn't fast, but I will tell you, when we're talking about a compact that will last for hundreds of years, whether it takes an extra year or not, I think will, in the grand scheme, not matter as much as to whether or not we are enforcing the rights under the compact. That is the critical question, whether we do or not precisely how long the Supreme Court will take. Having said that, we anticipate that the Supreme Court will pick up this case. We'll probably have a special master appointed within the next 12 months, and under normal litigation timelines, that's maybe 3 to 5 years before we get a result. I think an important thing to emphasize, which Director Bradley I think will talk about, is that this does not operate sequentially with the other aspects of permitting and design. In other words, we don't all have to sit here and wait until the Supreme Court addresses these questions for a lot of the other necessary work that has to be done in order to continue with this process when you're doing something relating to an interstate river is itself completed. So let me end where I started, which is a big thank you to the team behind me, big thank you to my team, an emphasis on the critical importance of this. By the way, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the governor's grandchildren are here. It is so important to them. They're in the front row. I expect some hard-hitting questions from them here in a second. But truly, it not only impacts them, but it will impact their grandchildren and their grandchildren after them. So we have a long journey ahead, but we have the right team. We're going to fight for Nebraska, and we're going to win. Thank you.
General Hilgers, grateful. You just said a key piece, right? General Hilgers just gave us the gift of belief. We are going to win. Not a shadow of a doubt in anybody's mind behind me. His team, we are going to win. Really, really proud of Director Bradley and his leadership. He's put a lot of his life into this project on all varying aspects. And Matt Manning, there's nobody that understands it better. So turn it over to Director Bradley. Jesse, thank you.
Thank you. Morning. I'd like to start just by echoing those sentiments that were expressed by the Governor and Attorney General about the need for this action. I'm sure there are questions regarding the potential impacts this action may have on the schedule of the project, but we remain highly confident that, as Attorney General Hilgers alluded to, we will remain on a parallel track and we will continue to move forward with the design and permitting actions to keep this project on schedule. We're currently in that process, working towards completion of the 60% design, and we're well into that permitting process. We expect both of those efforts to work towards conclusion by 2028. Then we would be initiating into our construction phase with our objective to get this project online by 2032, if not before. As we've said from the beginning of this project, this is critical to the future of Nebraska. The stakeholders that are standing here today, they represent a diverse interest and set of needs across the state that we have to protect for the future. In our agency, we will continue to push forward aggressively with this project, the schedule, the elements of design, permitting, and all of those other activities that are going to be occurring on that parallel track to make sure this project is completed on time. So, thank you. I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Justin. You know, I think maybe the other piece that I was remiss in mentioning is there's stakeholders behind me that could speak at extraordinary length on how important surface waters are to incredible parts of the state of Nebraska that don't have the Ogallala Aquifer under it. And that's another key piece. They've been doing extraordinary work for 100 years with surface waters, and there'll be things that Jesse's team, continuing on with the design and improving the canal systems in certain areas that would benefit the Perkins Canal and then also surface water users in the Panhandle and southwest Nebraska. So those are important issues as well. So we're opening it up for questions, and we'll try to be as succinct. Andrew.
How long has Colorado been holding water? And how long have you guys been monitoring that? And yeah, how long has it been going on?
I'll turn that over to Jesse.
I'll help answer that. I think there's been some sense that we haven't gotten everything. So the question from Andrew is, how long has Colorado been withholding water, and how long have we known about it? It's hard to say precisely, pin a date on it. Unfortunately, it's not something like you get with your water bill. You know, you can just like open it up and look and say, did I get what I should have gotten or not? I think these gentlemen back here, I was talking to Mr. Stills about this just a little bit ago. I mean, they would say that they have felt on various summers that they have not gotten everything that they're entitled to. So this does stretch back a number of years. I think what we're seeing is two things, or three things maybe. Number one, the hydrology work that I mentioned with Director Bradley started to put a little bit more focus and definition around that and what we are entitled to. Number two is I think it's getting worse. Anecdotally, what they've said this year is I think of the days so far in the summer season, Andrew, we've only maybe half of those days gotten 120 cubic feet per second. And the third thing is, just like the Perkins County Canal, it is equally true with the canal as it is with the summertime flows, that Colorado will take as much water as we let them have. And so I think those are the three things that created a lot more urgency now. But certainly, it's been going on for some period of time. And I think in Discovery, when we finally get all the information from Colorado that we'd like to know, it very well may go back even some decades. But I think it's sort of just ripened now to be part of this lawsuit.
Thank you, Mike. And I think maybe the other thing to add to it, Andrew, would be farm boy common sense. All you got to do is go look and go along the river, and there has been more and more small reservoirs built to be able to hold water that should be coming, that they're holding it there for their new economy, that they're more concerned than anything following the law. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, you said landowners were willing to work with you before and then something flipped. What changed there, and I mean, why do you think that Colorado was involved in their decision change?
Yeah, I can go, so the question simply is, we said farmers were open to talking and visiting about selling their land at a reasonable rate, and what flipped, what changed. You know, I've been out and met with others, with farmers, and the conversations were very straightforward, very how is this going to be a win-win transaction, and what would be fair? And then all of a sudden that changed, and I think maybe Jesse or Matt could address that.
Yeah, maybe I'll touch on that one. So it's hard to say definitively, but I'll tell you at least what we observed publicly, which is probably in the last, I'll say 6 months, but don't hold me precisely to that, but say near the end of last year, what we saw was a pretty significant change on the ground in terms of the approach to Nebraska and the Perkins County Canal. I think maybe if this was a year ago, there were people having the kind of conversations the governor talked about. Maybe a year and a half ago, in fact, we did buy some land in Colorado. Nebraska owns some land in the state. But I think there became sort of a all-front war against what it is that we are trying to accomplish. And you saw a pretty sophisticated effort to organize multiple layers of Colorado society, from the landowners to the water utilities, to even some political leaders, to basically say we're going to draw a line in the sand. And I think once that sort of flipped, even if some of those landowners did still want to sell, which they may not have, it really became difficult, I think, for those people to step out and sell anything to us. I think it was really just sort of almost an on-the-ground, not capital P political, but small p political dynamics changed on the ground that just made everyone say, we're going to fight this thing.
Andrew?
How can you move forward with the design of the project if that's kind of what's being disputed in the lawsuit?
So Andrew's got the question is, how do you move forward in the design? And the design pieces that are moving forward are in Nebraska, and I'll let Jesse speak to that specifically.
Yeah, I mean, the way that process generally works anyway, you're sort of looking at alternatives through the process of how you're going to go about that design. We certainly will explore the alternatives we believe we're able to do under our rights under the compact, but that process will kind of allow us to have sort of flexibility in the design that, you know, we'll express both our view of it and maybe a narrower view. That way we have the alternatives in place to make sure that whatever comes out of this, we'll be able to proceed quickly through the permitting process, get that concluded, and then on to construction.
If I can add, just on top of that, Andrew, just for your sort of awareness, Colorado has not taken the position that we cannot build the canal. I think that's important for people to understand. They've acknowledged that we have the right under the canal. Now, they have arguments that we don't think are correct that say, well, it can't be as big as you want in Nebraska, or maybe it's got to go this separate route. And so we know a canal can be built. Even under the worst case, under this particular case, we know a canal will be built. So most of the work that Director Bradley's talking about can be done, including, I think, one of the most critical components, the permitting process. You know, when you're doing interstate waterway construction, the permitting at the federal level is time intensive, and you can do all of that work sort of in parallel. So I think that's important to sort of add additional context.
Just had a follow-up with that. Can you remind us, what is the timeline? What was it planned to be? And I know you said you want to keep it on track, but how could this shift that if it's 3 to 5 years of potential Supreme Court litigation?
Well, I think that the question is in terms of the timeline. Certainly, the original goal was to be able to, as we put forth in our first budget in '23, was to be able to say, okay, reality would be that we'd get this completed by '28, '23, 5 years. Maybe that's backed off a couple of years, but yeah, I think that we have confidence, and that's where what Director Bradley talked about in regard to the permitting and some phases of it within Nebraska, that we would be able to have water flowing for at least by 2032. Anybody change that? Pretty close? Yep. Obviously, I'm not a patient guy. I'd rather see it in 28, so.
We'll do our best.
There you go. Zach?
I know the Attorney General mentioned he's been discussing with his counterpart in Colorado. Governor, have you had any conversations with Governor Polis about this issue, and where are you two at on this?
Yeah, so Zach asked a question where I'm at with Governor Polis, and no, the bottom line, he and I do not agree one iota, and there's no sense in further conversations.
Well, let me add to that. Let me if I might, Governor. I mean, just the governor. I'm only adding from my perspective. This is up to this point has been largely a lawyer-to-lawyer conversation. We won't make a decision without the full sign-off and agreement of the governor. This deals with our state sovereign rights. So we are in active conversations with the specific agency that matters the most on resolving this, which is the Attorney General's office. So I will say those will bear fruit. There's still some possibility that at some point there will be a way to find an agreement with Colorado that will get this thing built more quickly and with less money. And I think having those conversations that we've already sort of invested in those relationships, and I think that'll pay off over time. So we're in a good spot, but I think the governor's right. I think Governor Polis has said pretty consistently that he's a heck no on this project, which is pretty unfortunate because Colorado agreed to this 100 years ago. We gave up something pretty significant and valuable in exchange. So.
And Zach, I think you know me well enough. I'm not playing goober politics on this. We're going to fight for Nebraska. Yes, sir.
Just kind of a follow-up and maybe some clarification. So Colorado is not saying Nebraska can't build the canal, will be built. What exactly is the question then? Is it how it's going to be built and what your rights are with the amount of water you can have? Just
Two big buckets of questions, Anthony. One bucket has nothing to do with the canal. We are entitled today to 120 cubic feet per second, CFS, in the summertime. So today, literally this day, we are entitled to that. We're not getting it. So that's nothing, whether we build a canal or not, we're entitled to that. We're not getting it. So we've sued on that. The second bucket is the canal. They have not said we can't build the canal, but there are threshold questions that really go into the canal's design and where it is located that are pretty significant before you start breaking ground. So for instance, where is the route? There's some minor disagreement of where the route might go. As I mentioned before, if we have to get it through eminent domain, which as of today we would have to, where do we go to actually perfect that right? We don't want to be stuck in a water court for 6 years in the state of Colorado, as an example. I also mentioned the size of the canal. There's a disagreement. If we are right and we get more water, or we get the water that we're entitled to under the compact, the canal will be a little bit bigger, which will impact, of course, the land acquisition, the easements, and the rest. If they're right, it'll be a little bit smaller. So it's not you can say, yes, we agree to a canal, but there's some yes buts that are critical to answer before you actually get to the groundbreaking process. And that's why we've gone to the United States Supreme Court. This is what the Supreme Court, in part, is designed to do. It's right. They have original jurisdiction over these types of cases. Cases that, by the way, if you were a sovereign state, sovereign country, these are the types of things over natural resources people go to a war over. Thankfully, in the United States, we don't do that. We fight in court. But this is what the United States Supreme Court is designed to do, which is address these enormously important sort of foundational questions for the future of various states.
Is there like any precedent or case law on this from other things that the Supreme Court has already ruled on that you can bring up
So
when you go to court?
the question is there precedent that from the Supreme Court on these types of cases? Yes and no. Broadly speaking, there is a lot of precedent on relatively. These don't happen a lot, but they do happen. Interstate water disputes are not an anomaly in our country's history. It's one of the most frequent cases between states that go to the United States Supreme Court, even if not the most frequent. So there's some case law around water rights that we'll be able to point to. I say no, though, because there's certain things like the eminent domain provision that I've articulated to you that we don't think there's any case, we don't think there's a provision of its kind anywhere in the country. So we'll be breaking some new ground, no pun intended, but we'll certainly be able to point to the court's prior jurisprudence where needed.
Andrew?
Do you have any specific data on how much water, I guess, that you're not getting on summer days, and I guess how far that dates back?
Want me to handle that one?
You can, no, it's all right.
Yes, the question was, do we have specific data on how much we've lost in the summertime? The two data points I can give you are the anecdote, which I just shared with you from, and I'm going to point them out. Mr. Shills gave it to me, which is, I think, we're getting maybe 75 CFS this summer per day on average, and like I mentioned to you before, maybe half the days we're getting to 120, the other half we're not. And the other data point that I've got is that we have at least 1 million acre feet that we think conservatively we haven't gotten, Andrew. It certainly has been years. There's no doubt about it. I don't want to suggest this has all been in the last 2 or 3 years. It's been, and potentially even decades. And by the way, there's no statute of limitations on these things. In Nebraska, we're not just a litigious people. We don't just go at the first sign of trouble. I think for decades, this team would say we've worked well with Colorado. Maybe not so much now. But I think one of the key questions, Andrew, which we're going to find out in discovery, is getting data from Colorado. We haven't gotten all the information that we need from Colorado to really understand how they've been complying. So I would give you those quantitative data points as sort of a starting place, and then ask me maybe in 2 years, we'll come back and tell you if we've got more.
I think the other to add is we've got folks behind us that have implemented latest technology. They know exactly what the flow rates are. We have the data. They're not estimates, not being written down on a yellow legal pad. We have the data that confirms how short we've been. Yes, sir, John.
3 to 5 years of litigation, how much can we expect this to cost Nebraska taxpayers in terms of the work that your office will be doing over the course of this time?
Can we take that?
Yep.
The question is, how much can we expect the litigation will cost? Probably our best estimates is it'll be over. I would anticipate it'll be over $1 million. Probably maybe a couple $1 million in all-in costs, expert costs, some outside counsel fees. I would say 2 things to provide a little bit of a context for your viewers, John, is a lot of this work's going to be done within our bureau. I think Nebraskans get tremendous value out of the Attorney General's office, and there's no group they get more value of, maybe in state government, than the small group of attorneys that are in our Ag and Natural Resources group. Justin Levine and his team do a world-class job, do a lot of heavy lifting on a lot of important fronts, and they're driving a lot of this litigation. And so a lot of it's going to be, there won't be additional incremental cost. So I would say probably a couple $1 million is probably our best estimate when we're all said and done, which is a small percentage of the overall cost. We're very thoughtful about taxpayer money, of course. And I would just, the one thing if I didn't say, I'd regret it, is the cost of not doing something. The cost of the project itself pales dramatically with the cost of not doing something. If we don't do something, we'll look back in 50 years and we'll be kicking ourselves. In 50 years. Think about 150 or 200 years when we're not getting water out of the South Platte River.
And I might add to it, most of us from business would say, well, that's not very much. What I want to make sure we assure all Nebraskans, Attorney General's Hilgers has got the A-team. The A-team's going to be there, and if we need to get support outside, we will. We are not going to save pennies on this project. We are going to have the A-team 100% of the time, and we're going to win. Zach?
Governor, could you remind us how much the legislature has appropriated and what size of canal?
I think the number was 693 million, and I think in our budget, if I remember correctly, we increased the scope to 1,000. That was a $52 million further investment, and the simple piece of that would be math would say 2 out of 10 years. There would be way more off-season water flow, and so to go from 623 million to 693, whatever the number was nothing but a fantastic investment to get water that otherwise we would lose out on. So that's roughly what the project is. Mark?
Do you have any data that would indicate there's been damages from the Colorado not living up to the minimum so far for agriculture or any of the industries or cities along the river?
I can give you a bird's eye. The question Mark has is there any indication of any damages by not living up? Yeah, I think all we need to do is look at pictures this time of the year in the Panhandle when you get out and look at farmers' fields where they've been short water, expecting to have the water, planning on having the water, and half of their fields are burned up and dry and can't produce anything and they made the investment of putting the crop in. I don't know if anybody else here can speak to that.
I've got something else to say. Yeah, Mark, and this is a conservative, I'm going to say this so that if some Colorado attorney decides to cite this next part of the transcript against me in the Supreme Court, I'm not saying this is what our damages are. So this would be a minimum conservative floor. But if you just do the math, a little over 1 million acre feet that we know of so far, and if you took one of the most conservative spot prices for acre foot of water in the state of Nebraska now, which by the way, if you're in Colorado, would be much, much higher. So you're talking about maybe $100 an acre foot here, maybe thousands in Colorado. But if you just took the Nebraska price and just said we've lost out on those two things, that's over $100 million of value just from the water on Article 4. If you were to take even, if it's more than that, more water than that, which it almost certainly will be, and if the price is higher, which it almost certainly will be, you're talking about maybe upwards of $1 billion or higher, just on that portion. Of course, the water, you can put a price on water, but you really can't put a price on your access to a sufficient supply of water. And so there's like really significant damages to the whole state when we don't have the water, not just the dollar value of the water, but the impact on our ag and our irrigators and our other parts of our state.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted to add one thing. I mean, the stakeholders are here. They've certainly seen these impacts. I know Dennis, he's a board member on the Western Irrigation District out in the Panhandle and, has seen historic periods in 2022 where they couldn't deliver water to portions of their district, things that hadn't happened before historically. So, I mean, we certainly see those kind of on-the-ground impacts throughout the South Platte Basin.
Question for Attorney General. How long is litigation likely going to take? There is probably some turnover in your office in those years. How is your office going to be able to stay focused on, the task and make sure everyone's
Are you announcing that someone's running against me for Attorney General here? Be a really not cool way to do that, Anthony. Well, look, I mean, we build our team to be able, no one's irreplaceable, including myself in our office. We build an elite team of outstanding superstars so that if we have someone out for a game for injury or whatever else, we continue to hum. We've got an elite team. It would be no surprise if some of those people were to leave at some point because they're super talented and there's a market for talented people. We want them to go and be able to sort of achieve what they can professionally. But I will say this team has got an amazing culture and they are committed to this fight. So whether we have some turnover or not, we'll have the institutional knowledge, and at the end of the day, as the governor said, we're going to have an A-team and elite lawyers inside and out to be able to win the fight.
To the Attorney General, you were speaker, of course, when this first came through. Did you anticipate at that time the legal battles, the legislative attempts to claw back funding? And can you kind of just take us through where you were at
Yeah, that's a good question. I think whether I thought it when I was speaker, sort of like having a young child, you don't really remember a lot of those days. So let me give you my sense of, I think it was always inevitable we were going to go to the United States Supreme Court. I think we knew that back in 2022. I think these are core issues between two states, and unless Colorado was just going to say, do whatever you want, Nebraska, which was never realistic, then I think we always knew we were going to be in front of the court. I think, I think there will probably continue to be some senators who will continue to be a minority, significant minority of senators within the body who will try to claw that money back. And I think the reason why they won't be successful is the same reason we're fighting for it now, which is if we don't actually exercise our right today, we will, that is the one way we will lose. We could maybe not get everything we want in front of the Supreme Court, but if we don't file, we will lose, period, full stop. And what we will lose will so far outstrip the cost of this particular project that it will really be a shame on us moment if we don't actually follow through. So look, that's the legislative process. People are going to try to get money from all sorts of different things, and that's okay. That's their prerogative. They're representing their constituents. I will anticipate that in the next 3, 4, 5 years, more people will want it, or other people will try to do that. But I think the legislature will continue to do the right thing.
I think that there's one other comment that's really important in this. This is not a cost to Nebraska. This is a multi-generational investment in Nebraska. It's incredibly important. Any other questions? Thank you all for being here. Thank you for getting the word out. And I want to just thank all the stakeholders, everybody's work for lots and lots of years. Gigantic kudos. Without all the stakeholders here that have been working on this project for 25 plus years, we wouldn't be here. And we're really, really grateful. Have a great day. Keep enjoying Nebraska rains. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thanks, guys.